And a report by the Census Bureau out tonight says that women who work full-time still earn only 64% of what men make, in spite of significant gains by women at the workplace. The report said, however, that making it in today's world is not the same for all women. It said a major factor in the income gap was that some women choose lower-paying jobs for other benefits, such as flexible hours. On special segment tonight, our second report on the coal barons. Tonight, we focus on one man and how the coal fields made him very rich and controversial. NBC's Lisa Myers has his story.
This man is a modern-day coal baron. Rich, powerful, some say too powerful. L.D. Gorman of Hazard, Kentucky has made his fortune on coal ripped out of the mountains of eastern Kentucky.
The area that you've been looking at here was illegally mined by Vegas Coals Incorporated.
The principal owner?
L.D. Gorman. He's a banker, a millionaire, has a lot of business contacts, has a lot of political contacts.
Gorman's company had a permit to mine a portion of the land as required by law, but the mining far exceeded the permit. Sidney Cornett owns the land Gorman's mining destroyed.
Almost any other small coal operator that had done the same thing would have been shut down.
When Cornett complained, Gorman was allowed to revise his permit. He mined out the land, then left it unrestored, in violation of federal law. And Gorman has profited in other ways from illegally mined coal. In 1977, his coal processing operation was identified by the state of Kentucky as the purchaser of cheap wildcat coal, mined illegally without paying state and federal fees or obeying environmental laws. It is not illegal to buy wildcat coal. It is illegal to participate in its mining.
If you had wildcat coal, he was the one to get rid of it for you.
Did he encourage people to mine illegally?
That was his property, but the mining was done on. He even drove on the job site sometimes. He'd tell you when to haul the coal, and he'd stay open at night, and you'd bring the coal in or on a Sunday.
This source said Gorman hid the transactions by laundering payments through the People's Bank and Trust Company, the bank he ran until 1983.
And he'd fish up a phony company's name. His company would pay that phony company, and you'd go up to his special teller. He would take the check and cash it.
In a separate issue, federal bank examiners cited Gorman's bank for violation of federal banking law in the issuing of letters of credit to coal companies controlled by Gorman. L.D. Gorman played by his own rules when he bought coal and when he sold coal. Randall Young manages one of 9 utilities suing Kentucky utilities for overcharging consumers.
We're talking about millions of dollars, several $1 million. We feel that Mr. Gorman and Kentucky Utilities have worked together to really steal from the small electric consumer.
Court documents reveal that Gorman gave thousands of dollars in gifts to Seth Botts while he was KU's chief coal buyer, including vacations at Gorman's Florida retreat. L.D. Gorman has a knack for developing connections. Last February, Gorman's flagship operation, Black Gold Sales, was targeted for a federal audit. The audit began, then suddenly, abruptly, stopped. Jed Christensen is in charge of the Office of Surface Mining, which was conducting the audit.
My people came to me and determined that there was no reason for us to be there because the IRS was already there doing an audit. So until that was finished, there was no reason for us to go in and do the audit.
However, documents obtained by NBC News tell a very different story. They make no mention of OSM concern with an IRS audit. They do reveal Gorman's attempts to use his political connections to stop the audit. Inspector Patrick Angel wrote a memo after a telephone call from Gorman.
He said he had 2 U.S. senators in the process of contacting our, quote, head man, end quote, Mr. Christensen.
That was Wednesday, June 18th. The following Monday, the audit was postponed indefinitely. A government auditor quotes Gorman as saying he was going to do what he wanted to do, even if that meant getting the law changed. Gorman refused requests for an on-camera interview. After numerous inquiries from NBC News, OSM recently reopened its audit. Gorman continues to refuse to cooperate with the government. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Lexington, Kentucky.
In tomorrow's special segment, Lisa Myers will report on how one of America's biggest corporations, the W.R. Grace Company, tried to turn a legal loophole into big profits in the coal fields. Larry Layton was one of the few members of the People's Temple cult who survived his mass suicide in Guyana in 1978 and the murder of California Congressman Leo Ryan. Layton was later found guilty of conspiracy in that killing, and in a San Francisco courtroom today, he was sentenced to life in prison. He could be eligible for parole in about 4 years, however. In a Jerusalem courtroom today, John Demjanjuk, listened as a third survivor of the Nazis' Treblinka death camp, identified him as the brutal guard known as Ivan the Terrible. He's on trial on charges of murdering hundreds of thousands of Jews in Treblinka's gas chambers. NBC's Martin Fletcher reports tonight that the evidence presented in this case has stirred deep emotions.
My daughter, Sipili, where is she?
The trial is becoming a national trauma for Israel. Survivors of the Treblinka death camp are calling up images of the past that force Israelis to relive the Holocaust.
The cries of mother, mother, a little water. Who can do such a thing? How?
When the trial opened 3 weeks ago, Israelis were apathetic. Today, it's the talk of the nation.
During the course of the break, Your Honor,
on buses, Israelis listen to the live broadcast of the trial. They line up daily for a seat in the courtroom or the overflow room. The trial is showing Israelis how to live with their past, according to Rabbi David Hartman.
I'm a dignified person now because I can deal with the horror of my nightmare.
For Israel's children, the Holocaust has been a subject to study, something their grandparents talk about or refuse to talk about. Now the trial's on TV. It's discussed in class. The trial of Demjanjuk, who's accused in the murders of 850,000 Jews, helps the children understand the trauma of the survivors, why they didn't do anything to help their families.
They didn't try to be heroes and do heroic things. They tried to survive.
Why have a trial 40 years later?
It's very important to our country, to our pride, that these people judged and may be killed if he's guilty.
That's the question many Israelis are asking. Is John Demjanjuk guilty? Is he really the notorious prison guard known as Ivan the Terrible, or just a retired auto worker from Cleveland, as he claims? Every child in the classroom was sure.
When I see him on the TV, I want to kill him.
Rabbi Hartman believes this is a healthy reaction, but says the lesson of the trial is that revenge must take second place to the rule of law. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
One lesson of the Iran-Contra scandal may be that ambition must also take second place to the rule of law. The Iran affair and what it has shown us about a president and his staff is the subject of John Chancellor's commentary tonight. John?
Tom? In England, where they have a constitutional monarchy, they say the Queen reigns but does not rule. The ruling is done by the British government, headed by a prime minister. In America, the government rules and its chief officer is the president. Yet, one of the criticisms of Ronald Reagan is that he is poor at ruling but good at reigning. He is very good at playing the part of the king. He can make the country feel good. We can also know that he can be amazingly relaxed about governing, letting his staff run things, heavily dependent on his chief of staff. In his first 4 years, the chief of staff was James Baker, now Secretary of the Treasury. Jim Baker is a very smart cookie. When he was at the president's elbow, the Reagan administration was a success. For the next 2 years, the chief of staff was Don Regan, who didn't object when people called him the prime minister. Don Regan was not a smart cookie, and the administration became a disaster area. The lesson is clear. When the chief of staff was good, this president was good. When the chief of staff was bad, this president was bad. The new chief of staff, Howard Baker, is good. The new Baker says he has no intention of being a prime minister. Of course he says that. The rule is, if you're smart enough to be prime minister, you're also smart enough not to call yourself prime minister. Jim Baker never called himself prime minister either. But the last 2 years have shown the reality of the Reagan presidency. When the chief of staff performs badly, the president performs badly. When you think about it, prime minister is not a bad job description for the chief of staff in the Reagan White House, which is commentary for this evening, Tom.
Thanks, John.